Well, hello, my science friends. How are you doing today? I hope you're doing well. Today's a great day for me, and I think it's going to be even a better day for you once you find out what we're going to be learning about today. As you can see, we're going to be talking about the classification of animals and a nonfiction book. Is that not exciting? So, in our past study, we've been learning a lot about animals this year. In fact, you've written an opinion paper about your favorite animals. So, you're prepared for this activity. We're going to take it to the next level we're going to start by talking about how do I classify my animal? Because there's different types of animals. Maybe you've heard of mammals. There's a classification of birds, reptiles, amphibians, and we can't forget fish. So as we classify these animals, you can see this little story here tells us, this little article here tells us how we might go about classifying them. It says if we classify animals, we might sort them in different ways. We can start or sort by how many legs they have. We can sort by its size, shape, and color. We can sort them by if they have fur, scales, or feathers. We can sort by what kind of place they call home. There are so many different ways to classify animals, and we can do that same thing for plants also. But today our focus is on animals. So if you want to sort a tree or something, or plants and flowers, you would go to this level. But today our focus, like I said, is let's classify some animals. So be thinking, how would you classify your animal that you chose? And let's see if you're right. But before we do that, again, I need you to get your materials out that we have created thus far together. We're going to be talking about how do I go about publishing my nonfiction chapter book about my animal. And there's steps that you would do. You don't just take it and throw it together. We've done the rough draft part. Now it's time to start taking the rough draft into a revised and edited format, and then we can publish it, and then it's ready to be read to others. So the first thing we need to know about in classifying animals, we need to know a little bit more about our animal. So what I'd like you to do is look over this chart here and find out what classification your animal that you chose would be in. And while you do that, I'm going to go ahead and read some of the most important features that make up your animal's classification. So mammals have fur or hair. Mammals nurse their young with milk. Mammals give birth to live young. They're also warm-blooded. There's land mammals and water mammals. Okay, as compared to birds, let's find out about birds. Birds have feathers, 2 legs, wings, and a beak or a bill. They're also warm-blooded. They lay eggs on land. Their eggs are hard. There are more than 10,000 species of birds in the world. Okay, let's talk about reptiles. They have scaly, dry, watertight skin. They're cold-blooded. They lay eggs on land. Their eggs are soft and leathery. They live everywhere except for Antarctica. So you can see a lot of reptiles, huh? Well, now let's talk about amphibians. Amphibians, the word in and of itself means 2 lives. They have smooth skin. They're cold-blooded. They lay eggs in water. Their eggs are jelly-like, and they live everywhere except for Antarctica. And something that's interesting between the reptiles and amphibians is that a reptile has legs under their body, and amphibians, you can see, they have legs on the side of their bodies. So a lot of similarities between these two. Okay, let's study a little bit more about these particular animals. Mammals have lungs and breathe air. Birds have lungs and breathe air. Reptiles have lungs and breathe air. But look at this. Amphibians, because they go through a metamorphosis as a larva, they do have gills. And then as they start to grow, they develop lungs. And so as a frog, they're able to breathe air. Some of them just through their skin, but a lot of times through their lungs. I have also chosen some specific videos that might help you better understand what it is that what makes your animal different or unique. So if you have time, I would recommend that you watch your particular video on your animal. And then one last side note about amphibians. These are the specific types of amphibians. There are caecilians, salamanders, frogs, and we can't forget toads. Okay, next, let's start talking about how we're going to create our book. So if you wanted to write a story about the emperor penguin, you would need to write your title on top. You would draw an illustration, which is a picture of your animal, and then on the bottom you would write by and write your name because you are the author. Next, you would have, if you have access to a nonfiction book at home, this is the time when you would want to take that book out and just kind of do a picture walk through it quickly and see what makes up a nonfiction book. As you would tell, there's usually a title page, and then there's a dedication page where they dedicate it to their mom or their dad or a family member, somebody that helped inspire them to write the book. And then usually you would come to the next page, which would be called the table of contents. And specifically in an informational book or a nonfiction book, you would want to help your reader understand the topics that you are going to be teaching them. So you would list each topic with a chapter. So chapter 1, when you read your book, you would be learning or teaching people about the classification of animals, and then you would list how many pages include that topic. Then you would go to your chapter 2, and then you would inform your audience about your animal's habitat and tell them what pages they could read that information on. And then you would go down through all of the different other topics that you would be teaching them. All right, today our focus is strictly is chapter 1. And also we're going to tie in a little bit about chapter 5 too, just with the terminology, carnivore, herbivore, and omnivore. That will be covered also here. And a little bit about my animal's predator, because we talk about the food chain. So anyways, let's get started. Chapter 1, so you should have a page similar to mine. It's called the classification of animal page. Don't forget to write your name here. You're writing this. Then you're going to want to draw your animal, and you're going to want to label that animal. You're going to want to create a diagram. And so you're going to explain why it's classified as that. If you have a bear, then you would draw an arrow to some fur and say fur, and list whatever it is that makes it that type of animal that you chose. And it says, don't forget to write the name of your first chapter's heading, which is this. Then write one sentence explaining why your animal is part of its designated group. So you would say, I am a mammal because, and if you can't remember why you're a mammal, then you would come back to this page and I have it all listed for you. You could take some of these notes. You would say, because I have fur, comma, nurse my young, comma, give birth, comma, am warm-blooded, comma, a land mammal, comma, and then you could also say, if you were doing mammals, and I have lungs to breathe air. So that's going to be a really long sentence, but let's practice using commas. Remember, we use commas when we're listing a number of things, and so this would be a great opportunity to practice our skills using commas. Don't forget to add what? A period too. Notice I started the sentence with a capital and I used my comma before my because, which is like a conjunction. And let's move on now to the next page that will be part of your classification of animal page. Is going to look something similar to this, except you're going to have to fill in the blanks on this and this. This is an example of how you might do your page. So we're going to be using what's called a Venn diagram to compare and contrast the similarities and differences between you, the human, and your animal, whichever animal it might be. I just happen to choose orca whales. Don't forget to write chapter 1 classification of animal on your page. Now it would be page 2. And you would write same here. So this is the things, these are the things that make you different. These are the things that make the orca whale different, or whatever animal that you're learning about different. This part here, we write down the similarities of what we both have. Everybody good? Okay, let's try the next page. Okay, if you want to take it to the next level, you can do it with 3 circles, a Venn diagram with 3. The interesting thing about a Venn diagram with 3 is this is the sweet spot right here. This is the spot of those 3 circles where they're all in common. And so you would have to think, well, what are the things that human, bears, and eagles all have in common? And I said they eat fish, they have eyes, and they're all warm-blooded. And then on this part here, this would be just you. What makes a human unique? What makes bears unique, and what makes eagles unique? This would be the similarities between you and an eagle. You can fly. As human beings, we're smart. We use our brain. We can't physically use our arms to fly, but we can use our brains to help us know how to fly because we study how birds fly. So yes, we can get on an airplane and fly from one state or from one country to another, or you can hang glide, which is an extension of your arms to help create that air resistance using fabric, which is more like what birds have because you have to be light. Or parachutes allow us to fly for a short time. You can see here what's common between just the bear and the eagle eye says they catch food with claws and talons. Okay, so anyways, you can see this is kind of fun to do. If you've never done one, I'd suggest doing it. Now we're going to read a story about birds. Birds are a kind of animal. Birds can be found all over the world. Sparrows, doves, cardinals, owls, eagles, hawks, chickens, and hummingbirds are some common birds. So birds are what? They're vertebrates, or they have backbones. So are you a vertebrate? Yes, you have a spine, don't you? They are the only kind of animal with what? Feathers. Birds lay eggs. Usually they have a nest for their eggs. Birds have what? 2 feet. And they have special arms called what? Wings. Most birds can fly. Birds have feathers, wings, and they have very light bones, which allow them to fly. They're very hollow. They can't be too heavy though, otherwise they can't fly. And these are the birds that can't fly. You can notice ostriches are very heavy birds, and penguins are very dense, and there's really no purpose for them to fly. So they just know how to swim well, and their wings have turned into flippers, haven't they? So that's through kind of adaptation processes that we talked about that will occur. Next, let's find out a little bit more information about mammals. So if you're studying about mammals, this will help you. Mammals are amazing animals. Their bodies are covered in fur or hair and are what's called endothermic. Say that with me. Endothermic. That means they're warm-blooded, which means they get warm from the food they eat. Mammal babies drink milk from their mother. Also, their babies are born alive, not in an egg. Finally, mammals are vertebrates, which means they have a backbone. Examples of mammals are cows, dogs, cats, and humans. Good. Next, it's going to be riddle time. So if you have your journal paper in front of you, I want you to start thinking about how could you write a fun little riddle and share that with someone. This is how you would write a riddle. So you would start with, using lots of adjectives to describe it. So a lot of descriptive language. You would say, it has a long tail. It has whiskers. It says meow. And a lot of nouns too. What animal is that? And the answer is, it is a cat. So this is how you would create your riddle. So it has lots of adjectives and lots of nouns. It has scales. It swims. It lives in water. What animal is that? Well, it's a fish. And that was one of the animals that I did not go into great detail with you about today. I figured most of you have basic knowledge about fish and you would be fine. Okay, so that's how you would do that if you enjoy riddles. Next thing we're going to talk about would be, what are food chains? So we learned a little bit that we are warm-blooded or endothermic. We have endothermic capabilities as human beings, which means we're warm-blooded. And it's all about the energy. We don't need to go outside and stand in front of the sun, even though it feels good. Our body temperature always stays at about 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, if that temperature changes, then you know that your body's trying to fight off a sickness, and you would be having what's called a fever. And so that's just when you raise your temperature, it's supposed to kill the bacteria, the viruses that are in your body. But we, as mammals, generally have a temperature somewhere around that 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, let's find out, how do we get this energy that we're talking about to maintain our body temperature at that degree? Well, it says food chains show how energy moves. When something eats something else, energy moves. We need food energy to play and learn. How do plants and animals get their energy? And so you can see this is kind of like a sequencing chart. We're going to start with one, move to the other, move to the other, move to the other. So think about when you eat that hamburger, where did that energy from the hamburger come from? Well, as you can see, everything starts with our sun's energy. The sun gives off sunshine, which is an energy. It can burn you, if you're outside too much. It's got some power to it. And that sunshine goes into the leaves of the grass or the plants, and there's a conversion that takes place. It's a chemical reaction, and it's called photosynthesis, and that sunshine is converted to a sugar within the plants, and that allows them to live and grow. And then a cow comes and it eats the grass, and now the cow has taken in the energy from the grass, and now its body converts it into its energy to help it move and grow. And then we, as humans, we take the cow and we butcher it, and we grind up the beef, and it makes hamburger, and then we eat it. And then we get energy from eating the bread as carbohydrates, and the protein from the beef goes into our bodies, and it sustains us so that we have the energy that we need to run marathons, read books, and to maintain our body temperature so that we stay healthy. All food chains start with the sun. The sun feeds plants. Plants make their own food energy using the sun, water, and soil. Animals that eat plants are called herbivores. Say that with me. Herbivores. They get their energy from the plants. Herbivores are animals like cows, grasshoppers, and elephants. Okay, now let's talk about a different food chain. So this again begins with the sun. This time we have flowers or plants that have that photosynthesis take place that I talked about, a chemical reaction. And then you might have some little insects or bugs that come and they collect the pollen, and they're out flying around, and then a bird sees them, and then they're eaten for lunch by the bird. I mean, this is kind of graphic, but anyways, that's what happens. That's what happens in our world around us. And that bird now is sustained, and it has the energy it needs to fly and feed its young until it gets eaten, maybe by a fox or by some other animal. And then that energy is converted to the next animal and the next animal unless you are the animal that's highest on the food chain. Animals that eat other animals are called what? Carnivores. They get their energy from the animals they eat. Carnivores are animals like tigers, owls, sharks, and dragonflies. Some animals eat plants and animals. They are called what? Omnivores. Can you say that again? Omnivores. Are you an omnivore? And the answer is yes. Because think about what you had for lunch or for breakfast. Maybe for breakfast you had some pancakes and some eggs. Or maybe you had some orange juice with it. Then you have your oranges, which makes you an herbivore. And your grain is the pancake, and that's the herbs and the plants. And then you had your bacon, which is from ham, which is an animal. So yeah, we are definitely what's called omnivores, aren't we? Okay, that is the end of our slides. So I want you to come back with me and think about what we learned about today. Do a quick review over animals, amazing animals, and how you're going to be writing a book today, or starting it today. And don't just slough it together. Have some pride in the work that you're publishing. And again, I would encourage you to become very familiar with what makes your animal unique. What are the similarities and differences between you or your animal and other animals? And then go out and try to share that with some people today and teach them some of the cool things that you're learning too as a scientist or a zoologist. And boys and girls, I know that you're going to produce quite a masterpiece as you put your time and your energy into this fantastic book and in your study. So, boys and girls, I'm going to say goodbye for now, but just know I'm thinking of you, and I know you're going to do a great job. And keep on reading, keep on writing, and keep on sharing. Until next time, bye-bye.